Okay, call the meeting to order. Can I have a mover and a second to bring the meeting to order, please? Deputy Mayor Cogwin. Councillor Ritchie. That the regular meeting of the Council of the Township of Springwater of June 17, 2020 come to order at 6:30 p.m. All those in favor? Carried. Due to COVID-19, Council continues to take the necessary steps to limit in-person meetings. As such, 4 Council members are participating in the meeting electronically, and 3 councillors are physically here but physically distanced. As the Administration Centre is closed to the public, residents are provided with the following options to watch or listen to the Council meetings. You can watch it by visiting the Township website, www.springwater.ca. You can listen to the meeting from a telephone by calling 647-558-0588, and the meeting ID is 827-9845-9191 with the pound sign after it. This option is available during the meeting, and those who are unable to watch the stream live are encouraged to review the meeting at their convenience by watching the video on the Township's YouTube website. Good evening, Council. Hope you're well. Are there any disclosure of pecuniary interests at this time? Okay, so we move into a deputation. I now call upon Carrie Ann Brown for a presentation. Carrie Ann will be joining us electronically via Zoom with her request for a memorial bench in memory of Mark Romola. Welcome, Carrie Ann.
Hello. I'm Carrie Ann Brown. We are the Brown family.
I'm Ella.
I'm Reese.
And I'm Jeremy Brown.
And yes, we're here for the presentation in support of the permission to locate a memorial bench in honor of Marky Romola, as we call him, Mark Romola, at the Minising Recreation Center Pavilion. Sadly, on Family Day this year, we lost one of our own. Marky Romola passed away on February 16th, 2020, just shy of his 15th birthday. The extended Romola family have resided in Springwater for over 30 years. Marky was the son of Mark and Lisa Romola and big brother to Emily. Mark and Lisa live in Ant Mills. They are strong contributors to the Minising community, and they own Blue Moon Marine in Springwater. Mark's mother, Lisa, is a frontline worker, and she has been an RVH ER nurse at the Royal Victoria Hospital for over 16 years. Marky attended Minising Central for all of his elementary years, as well as my children, or our children. He graduated in June of 2019, and then he went on to Barrie North Collegiate. Mark has a younger sister, as I mentioned earlier, named Emily, and she presently attends Minising Central School and will be going into her grade 8 year in September. Mark shared a love of life, touching the lives of everyone around him in the community and in sports. He had a passion for his family, the cottage, and being with his best friend, his father. Marky was a soul that would brighten any room he entered. Mark was charismatic and he was genuine.
He was a loyal friend to all, and he had a sense of humor that drew people to him. Marky was an exceptional athlete. He was a talented member of the Minising Mustangs. As a member of the Mustangs, he played on most sports teams throughout his time at Minising, including hockey, rugby, football, basketball, volleyball, and track. You name it, he loved to play it.
He was a member of many of the teams that went on and won at regional and county levels. Mark was an excellent hockey player and played 9 years with the Barrie Minor Hockey Association as a member of the Barrie Colts AA team. He was a true athlete and teammate. Marky had a mechanical mind beyond his years. He loved to ride. He was an avid snowmobiler and a dirt bike rider. It was said that if it had wheels, Marky could fix it. He definitely had many talents beyond his years.
The Romola family have had more than their share of heartbreak. Marky had an older cousin, Carl Jr. Romola. Everyone called him KJ. KJ was unfortunately killed in an accident 12 years ago at the age of 20. At that time, the family obtained permission to place a granite bench in memory of KJ at the Minising Pavilion, which is still there today. KJ's memorial bench has stood the test of time with no maintenance or cost to the township. Our community is seeking permission to have the same type of bench built and placed at the pavilion in memory of Marky. hopefully near the present bench in KJ's honor. We are aware that the existing bench is used a lot and appreciated by local skaters and recreation pavilion users. There is plenty of room to add another bench in Marky's honor. The bench is a symbol left here on earth, a symbol for the family to help ensure that Marky will not be forgotten, a symbol of the kind of contribution he would have made to the community that he called home. Again, the bench design and material is granite, would be as close as possible to KJ's bench with a similar plaque of dedication, similar in look as possible. We have attached the photos to our presentation. They can be reviewed. Our group will cover all costs to produce the bench, stonework, installation, permits, etc. Staff to oversee installation and permits. We will also cover any costs the township might incur for the bench, including inspection fees, staff to oversee installation if required, etc. And we will follow all rules and regulations set out by council. We would be pleased to provide any further information or documentation that may be required to support approval of our request. In anticipation of council's approval, we would like to add that we would very much appreciate it if we could accomplish the installation by September so that all could enjoy it and also have it in place when Marky's sister Emily returns to school in September for her graduating grade 8 year.
Our desired action is gaining approval and installing the bench. Gaining approval and installing the bench would be an extreme honor for the family and the wonderful dedication memorial of this young man that left us far too soon. We want to extend our heartfelt thanks to council for your consideration of our request, and we'd be extremely grateful to receive approval of our request to locate the memorial bench on the township property at the Minisink Pavilion.
Thank you, Ramola family. Very heartfelt, and we mourn for the pain that you've experienced, and thank you for this idea. And
We're the Brown family. We're speaking on behalf of all of our community. We're not the Ramolas.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
To clarify.
May I have a mover and seconder to receive the presentation? Deputy Mayor Coughlin, Councillor Ritchie.
I'm sorry, Marilyn, I'd like to propose an amendment. The delegation, the recommendation states that council receive the recommendation, but I would like to move forward that in conjunction with the Brown family, that our staff move forward with the approval of placing the bench across from KJ's.
Okay. Clerk Ainsworth, I believe we have something prepared for that, please?
Yes, I have prepared an amendment that reads that the motion now before council be amended as follows. Add, and that the request be hereby approved with the following conditions: that the bench be installed at the Minisink Pavilion, and that all costs associated with the purchase and installation of the bench be borne by the requester.
And a seconder for that, please? Councillor Maude Chapman. Any further discussion? CAO Schmidt, as far as timing is concerned, would we, can you give us some insight into that? Would we be able to get onto that as soon as possible?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to members of council. So assuming the motion is approved by council tonight, I'll have staff connect with the Brown family, and we can try to make sure that we can try to meet that deadline of September of this year.
Thank you very much. All those in favor? Councillor Hanna, do you have your hand up?
I'm all in favor of the bench. I'm just concerned that there's going to be a lot of these probably coming forward in the future. Are we going to ask taxpayers to pay for all of them? Because I believe that's what the amendment's suggesting. Is that correct?
We're paying the entire bill.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry, I misunderstood the amendment. Yes, I'm in favor.
Clerk Ainsworth?
Thank you, through you to council. Staff will also be bringing forward a draft memorial bench policy in the fall for council's consideration, which will deal with requests going forward in the future, so that there's a consistent approach to any request for a memorial bench.
Okay, I repeat, all those in favor? That is carried unanimously. Thank you, and thank you again.
Thank you.
Mayor Allen, so that was a vote on the amendment. We need
Now-
to vote on the main motion as amended.
The main motion, same mover and seconder. Can you read the full motion, please?
That the delegation from Carrie Ann Brown regarding a request for a memorial bench in memory of Mark Ramola be received, and that the request be hereby approved with the following conditions: that the bench be installed at the Minising Pavilion, and that all costs associated with the purchase and installation of the bench be borne by the requester.
All those in favor? That is carried unanimously. Thank you. Thanks again, Brown family.
Thank you for your time. Enjoy your evening.
Thank you. Moving on to item 5 point, question period. Members of the public are invited to ask questions of council or make comments regarding an item on the agenda. In an effort to accommodate question period, the following process is followed. Members of the public wishing to submit questions or comments for question period shall have done so by 4:30 p.m. the day of the meeting today by contacting the clerk's department. Clerk Ainsworth, please provide council with any questions or comments that may have been received for this meeting.
No questions have been received.
Thank you. Moving on to 5.1, adoption of the minutes of council. Can I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Maude Chapman and Councillor Cabral, that the minutes of council listed herein be approved as presented. Minutes for the regular meeting of council, June 3rd, 2020. Any questions or comments? All those in favor? That is carried. There's no correspondence or information items. So we move on to the action report with an option in it. 7.1, the original pieces of Old 28 Queen Street West, the Community Improvement Plan application. Can I have a mover and a seconder to get this on the table, please? Councillor Cabral and Deputy Mayor Coghlan. The report from the planner regarding CI 220-002 pieces of old dated June 20, 2020 be received. Council, having considered the application presented, the requirements of the community improvement plan, and the total funding request, and then there's an option to move forward with this or to refuse the application. Any questions or discussions with respect to this? Councillor Cabral?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. Comment with respect to pieces of old. It's pretty much an institution in the village of Elmvale. And I know that there was some work done on it. It did come back. They did some brick pointing on the front and put up a new sign. Within probably the last 12 months, however, it was renamed Kimberly's, and it seems that the original folks who had involvement with the original pieces of old are the ones that are submitting this in order to reopen. So I'm in support of this. I think it's nice to kind of get it back, a bit more of a root flavor for Elmvale. It was a fairly well centerpiece for Elmvale. Lots of people attended there on a fairly regular basis. The unfortunate thing was that the previous owner, just health and whatnot, was not able to continue to move on, and that's why it became Kimberly's. But it's nice to know that I think it's falling back into family hands again.
Thank you.
I'm supportive of this, yes.
So the mover and seconder are supporting option A, is that correct?
Yes.
Any further comments? Okay, option A, that the application be approved and that the mayor and clerk be authorized to execute the appropriate agreements. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Thank you. Next, we move on to 8.1, which is action reports, and we have four of them. 8.2, 8.3, 8.4, and 8.5. Would anybody like to comment or pull any of these? Councillor Cabral,
8.4, 8.5.
8.4, 8.5. You want those pulled, Councillor Cabral?
I suspect I don't want to make comments. I have a couple of questions on both of them, so.
Okay, Councillor Ma Chapman?
I just have a comment on 8.5.
Okay, I think because of these, would be helpful to have some further description from Director Spagnell on these. We'll take each one of them then. So starting with 8.2, the mixed subdivision, and this is not pulling it, but just commenting on it. Director Spagnell, can you give us a bit of an update or overview of the report that was written with this, please? This is a mixed subdivision agreement authorization.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Allen. The purpose of the report, Council will recall that there was an information report that was brought forward at the last meeting, which had indicated that there had been a number of overarching conditions of approval that had been met with respect to work in the Midhurst settlement area, namely the mixed subdivision. As a result of further work and confirmation from Ainley Group, who is the township's consulting engineer, also confirmation from the Nottawasaga Valley Conservation Authority, and after further review of conditions of approval, this report is being brought to the table to obtain authorization for the mayor and the clerk to execute a stage 1 subdivision agreement, which would allow for site alteration to occur on the property. Just leading into this, what I'd like to do is go over the occurrences and the work that has been completed to date since the draft plan was draft plan approved in 2014. There were specific conditions of approval related to an environmental assessment that needed to be looked at, a long-range financial plan, along with other works that were more oriented towards dealing with stormwater management, so a master drainage plan, along with site-specific grading. And based on all the work that's been completed to date, staff and the team that has been working on this file is of the opinion that the file is ready to move forward towards site alteration on the property, on the basis that site alteration conditions reflected in the conditions of approval have been met to the satisfaction of staff to this date. So the end result of this would be the first stage of a number of stage agreements to facilitate the implementation of the draft plan approvals that were established in 2014. We also have Bruce Engel here, who is the main point person working on the township's behalf from a legal standpoint. He is able to go through the details of the agreement and the mechanics as to how this would work if the mayor sees fit. But that's why we have this report before us, is that the conditions for site alteration have been satisfied to staff's satisfaction.
Thank you, Director Spagnell. So I think we'll go through each one of 8.2, 8.3, 8.4, 8.5. So, Mr. Engel, Mr. Bruce Engel, and Mr. Joe Mullen, welcome. Thank you for joining us. Bruce, if I may, can you add to Director Spagnell's comments, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The approach that the draft approval took in 2014 is not a conventional approach, and it has an impact on how the subdivision agreement and the negotiation of it has taken place. So normally you would see a subdivision agreement coming forward near the end of the process and just before registration of the plan and final approval. And because of the way the conditions were structured here, that isn't the way it was designed. And so the approach to the subdivision agreement reflects that different approach. And there has been, I mean, the approval's been in place for almost 6 years, and a lot of work has happened in the background. And some of that is work related to ensuring that the overall approach in Midhurst works, and not specific to the mixed subdivision, which is before us now. And you'll see also Appendix D is a master external infrastructure agreement. The basic concept in the approvals for all of the plans was that the external infrastructure required to support those plans was going to be provided and paid for by the developers. And staff felt that was important to have that agreement in place before we got the ball rolling on any of the subdivisions. So the first stage, which involves the grading and doesn't involve servicing of the subdivisions, is what's contemplated by this agreement. The applicant was of the view that they could go to stage 2 already, but there's a few items that staff feel need further negotiation, and so we've not put that forward to you yet. It is fairly close, but we thought it was prudent just to proceed with stage 1, and that involves, as I understand it, a couple of months of work, and in that time period, the remaining issues will be ironed out for the stage 2 agreement. And just looking ahead, the stage 3 agreement is the external works agreement covering the details relating to the building of the sewage treatment plant and related infrastructure, as well as the water treatment plant. So that's sort of a high-level overview of the approach that we've been taking.
Thank you, Mr. Engel. Before we continue the discussion, can I get a mover and seconder to get this on the floor, please? Deputy Mayor Coughlin moving it, and some hands out there, please. Councillor Cabral seconding it. Mr. Mullen, any further comments before we open it up to questions or discussion?
Your Worship, yes, I'd just like to add further to Mr. Stagnall and Mr. Engel's comments that the engineering work has been ongoing over the past number of years, as has been alluded to both on the class environment assessment, obviously, as we all know, has been wrapped up. The stormwater management comprehensive master plan has been recently wrapped up. So those are big key components regarding the big picture of the Midhurst secondary plan. And then the engineering drawings for the development have been worked on and have been peer reviewed on 3 separate occasions now by our office and the municipality. And so we feel those are at a level that are close to final approval and definitely sufficient to allow the earthworks to proceed. So that's an update from our level at this point in time, and I'd be open to any questions as you go through your discussion.
Thank you. Councillor Moore.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. Through you then, probably to Mr. Mullen, I anticipate getting some phone calls shortly when the earth does start to move. So I want to be really clear what the next few months are going to look like for the residents in Ward 4. So is the work then going to be on just the south side of Snow Valley Road, and it's going to be just site alteration, meaning just moving dirt, no work on the north side of Snow Valley Road, and no infrastructure?
Mr. Mullen?
Thank you.
Yes, Your Worship, through the councillor. I'd like to just clarify. So what is contemplated is the earthworks within the subdivision limits. So that is south of Snow Valley Road. They will be accessing the site actually off Carson Road. There is currently a sort of a farm entrance or an old lane entrance to the property. So that will be the initial or the construction access, as we call it, during the next few months. Initially, they will be stripping some topsoil and then basically moving the earth around within the subdivision. There will be no construction of pipes. There will be no construction of roads. There will be no other construction other than literally moving dirt around within the site, getting it prepped for the next stage. But that earthworks will last probably the next 2 to 3 months. And then, as Mr. Engel has alluded to, there would be then further commitments and agreements required to move prior to moving to the next stage, that stage 2.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. I have a question, just to clarify. The Ministry of Environment conditions, I believe related to external versus internal services. Can Mr. Engel or Mr. Mullen, just go through that and how that is moving forward and the implications of that with respect to this, please?
Yes, Your Worship, I can touch upon that, and maybe if Mr. Engel would like to follow up. So just to clarify for everyone, when the class environmental assessment was cleared by the Minister of the Environment or the Minister himself in November of 2019, there was a number of conditions applied to that class environmental assessment report. Those conditions have been worked on through the developers and their specific consultants. A number of reports addressing those conditions have been or were actually over the winter submitted back to the ministry, and the ministry are still in the process of reviewing those. But those are related to that. So that process is still ongoing, and the ministry is reviewing the updated documentation that has been submitted in relation to those 4 or 5 conditions that were applied to the Class E external works.
Thank you. Other questions or comments? Okay, the motion reads that the report from the Director of Planning regarding SU 2012-04 Mixed Subdivision Agreement Authorization Report dated June 17, 2020 be received, and that the Mayor and Clerk be authorized to execute the subdivision agreement substantially in the form attached as Appendix C, which is to be registered against the subject lands to permit site works and site preparation as per the terms of the draft subdivision agreement, and that the Mayor and Clerk be authorized to execute the Master External Infrastructure Agreement substantially in the form attached as Appendix D. All those in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you. Moving on to 8.3, which is Rounds Ranch 1922, County Road 92. Can I have a mover and a seconder to get that on the floor, please? Deputy Mayor Coghlan, Councillor Ritchie. I'll turn it to Director Spagnuol to give an overview of the report, please.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. The purpose of the report is to bring forward a recommendation to Council to approve the official plan amendment that was applied for Rounds Ranch. The purpose of the official plan amendment is to...
Sorry, Director Spagnuol, just take a pause. I was reminded that Mr. Engel and Mr. Mullen, thank you. If you want to stay and listen to more, you can, but we certainly understand it's a beautiful summer evening, and you can be excused from the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Director Spagnuol, sorry, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. So the purpose of the report is to bring a recommendation regarding the official plan amendment for Rounds Ranch. The purpose of the amendment is to add 4 additional on-farm diversified uses and some tourism-oriented type uses through the official plan process. There was a public meeting that was held on January 15th, 2020, which entailed the introduction of that official plan amendment along with a zoning bylaw amendment. As part of deliberations with the planner working on behalf of Rounds Ranch, there's been revisions completed to the zoning bylaw amendment and some slight revisions done to the official plan amendment. At this point, based on the revisions provided by the provided to the official plan amendment, staff is comfortable with moving that forward to County Council for final approval to get the necessary land use permissions in place for the official plan. However, the one aspect of the application, which is the zoning bylaw amendment, the application did not include lands that were originally zoned for aggregate extractive uses. And based on the discussions with the planner working on behalf of Rounds Ranch, it was determined that there would need to be another public meeting to include those aggregate extractive lands or the lands that were zoned for that use. We have also confirmed, or staff have also confirmed, that the use and the license has been remitted. So in other words, the aggregate has been extracted, so it really does not, the piece of land doesn't have any value from an aggregate standpoint. And the idea behind the zoning bylaw amendment is to include additional agritourism type uses on that piece so that the operation can be more sustainable and have additional on-farm diversified uses and things of that nature to boast and to help them grow. So at this point, staff's recommending that the official plan amendment be adopted tonight by council so that that can be forwarded on to County Council for final approval. And staff is just providing information that there is an intended public meeting, virtual public meeting that is to be scheduled on July 27th to deal with the revision to the zoning bylaw.
Thank you, Director Spagnell. Questions, comments with respect to this? I have one, Director Spagnell. So why wasn't this expansion of the rest of the land contemplated in the first meeting? What has changed to have this be a two-stage process rather than a single stage?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. Quite simply, these lands were not included as part of the application, and they weren't referenced in the public meeting based on how the application was filed. So in order to include these and to fulfill the requirements of the Planning Act, a second meeting has to be completed to include the recognition that these are aggregate extractive lands so that they can now be utilized as part of the operation.
And what's the intention with these expanded lands?
The intention would be to utilize these lands for the agritourism aspect of the business. So really, it makes the property more viable. Just as a note, you'll notice in the report, there's a split zone that's proposed as part of the zoning bylaw. And you will see, it's on page 3 of the report, you'll see that there's an open, it's open water essentially from the former pit operation to the, I guess it would be the southwest of the property limits. So those would not have been zoned for the specific exception zone that's being proposed. And what the public meeting would do is incorporate that piece of land into the public process so that now those lands could also be used in affiliation with that portion of the split zone.
And am I right in saying that aside from comments of the MVCA, we received no comments?
That is correct, Mayor Allen, yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I'll read the motion that the report from the Director of Planning regarding application OP 2019-001 and ZB 219-012 dated June 17, 2020 be received. The Council adopt the official plan amendment on June 17, 2020, as the application is consistent with upper tier policy documents, and that the amendments be submitted to the County of Simcoe for final approval, subject to any minor modifications. All those in favor? That is carried unanimously. Thank you. Next is 8.4, draft bylaw regulating tow trucks attending collision scenes. Can I get a mover and second to get this on? Councillor Cabral and Councillor Ma Chapman. Are there questions or comments? With Councillor Cabral, I believe you had. Go ahead. You're on mute, please.
There we go. Sorry about that. Yes, I did want to address the one here that I guess I have trouble with. It kind of opposes itself almost. Is section 3.1, which is in regards to no person shall solicit, make or convey an offer of service to a tow truck on any highway while that person is within 150 meters of the collision scene, apparent collision scene, or vehicle fire. 3.2 stipulates that tow truck operators, when there's a scene such as that, have to park 150 meters away. That's fine. I guess what I'm envisioning here is we're trying to keep the area clear, but at the same time, we're kind of almost denying the person who's involved in the fender bender an opportunity to engage with a tow truck driver for the provision of services, because tow truck driver cannot come down there even just to give them a card and say, if you need my services, my truck's 150 meters up the road. And the person who's at the scene, if it's a minor fender bender and the police say, no need for us to remain here, or if the police don't even attend and it's just fire and they clear the scene, you're in a situation where this person's still going to have to walk 150 meters to the tow truck driver. So 3.1 is the one that's causing me concern. simply because of that. I think it's a little bit restrictive in the sense that if tow truck driver arrives on the scene of an accident and is able to offer assistance, and he gets out of his tow truck and he drives down to the scene and presents a business card or asks the operator if in fact he wants service, I think it's reasonable to allow that to happen in order for that person to basically say, I'm here if you need me. So that's one, because I think the real intent of the bylaw is to keep the area clear without a whole bunch of tow trucks congregating in the area and interfering with the firefighters and interfering with the police. And if that's what it's about, I understand the 150 meters distance. However, I'd actually like to see 3-1 struck or rephrased in such a way that if the operator attends the scene and speaks with the owner and the owner doesn't want his services or the owner's not interested in his service, that if the firefighters or the police at that time direct that individual to leave the scene and return to their truck, that would be a reasonable item in there, I think. But I just find it very difficult that we're at odds with a tow truck driver sitting 150 meters from the scene and the driver of vehicle who might want to avail themselves of their services. They're not really able to kind of connect on that. And the only other part I kind of on this is 3.2 with respect to the tow truck parking 150 meters away from the scene creates the offense. And then it seems a little bit redundant that in 3.4, I guess, where if they're within the 150 meters and they're directed by a firefighter or a police officer to move outside that 150 meter radius, they're already in breach of the bylaw by simply being there in the first place. But the main point, the main one I'd like to see altered or removed is 3.1. Other than that, I can live with this particular bylaw.
Okay, thank you. Clerk Ainsworth?
Thank you. Through you to Councillor Cabral. You're correct. The main intent is to deal with collision scenes or emergency scenes and to keep it clear of having anybody in the way, particularly tow vehicles, which has been the primary concern. In regards to section 3.1, that was put in there as a bit of a buffer again, so that multiple vehicles weren't showing up to a collision scene that might be unattended by emergency services, whether it be fire or police, and just to have the person who's involved in the breakdown or whatnot be able to call the company that they wish to call. So that section can definitely be reworded. As I mentioned, the intent was just to keep the emergency scenes cleared. But if council wishes to have that 3.1 reworded, that can definitely happen.
How would you suggest rewording it?
I would have to work with Councillor Cabral just to see the full intent of what his amendment is proposing.
I think from what I'm hearing, Councillor Cabral, and you can correct me, Councillor Cabral, you're advocating removing 3.1 and keeping 3.2 and 3.4. Is that correct?
Actually, Mayor Allen, if you refer to 3.4 where it says any person operating a tow truck or other motor vehicle within that 150 meters, something along those lines in place of what we presently have in 1 would allow the tow truck driver to at least go to the scene, ask the man if he wants services, I'll wait for you up the road, and if he's directed to leave the scene by a firefighter or a police officer at that time, then of course he would have to go back. But at least it would provide them an opportunity to meet. Not everybody has CAA. Not everybody necessarily knows who to call sometimes. Sometimes they refer to a friend. And quite often, if they're in a hurry and there's a tow truck on scene, they'll want to get hooked up and get fixed up right away. So, like I say, the only thing I have is with number 1, either to remove it or massage it to the point where it does provide a tow truck operator an opportunity to walk that 150 meters to see if his services are required. If they're not, he can go on his merry way. If they are, he's going to go wait in his tow truck or come back down when the fire or the police or the owner is ready for him to get hooked up.
Okay, Other comments, Deputy Mayor Coughlin?
Thank you, Marilyn, and through you, in reading the bylaw, I believe that the intent, or I interpreted the intent to be to remove people from soliciting during accidents, during collisions, to remove everybody from the scene. So if we don't have a provision that prevents people from soliciting services during that, I don't see the point of the bylaw then at all.
Clerk Ainsworth?
Thank you, through you to the Deputy Mayor. The intent is, yes, to secure emergency scenes. I believe what Councillor Cabral is speaking to is just somebody that might be broken down on the side of the road where that's not, there's no emergency personnel in attendance, so that the tow operator might be able to approach somebody who might be broken down to offer their services, if that's how I'm understanding it clearly.
Councillor Cabral?
Follow up, Mayor Allen. When this first came up, the intent of this bylaw actually, I don't think had very much to do with solicitation. The intent of the bylaw at that time was to allow the firefighters and the police to readily do their business without tow trucks parked in and near the actual scene of the accident, thereby causing them more work, more confusion, and a lot more activity there. That's the reason for the 150 meters for them to stay away from the scene. If there's a couple of tow trucks there and each driver takes a walk down and says to the gentleman, here's a card, if you'd like my services, I think it's a reasonable thing to allow the tow truck companies to do that. And like I said before, I'm happy to work with Clerk Ainsworth in order to draft it up so that the police and the firefighters would still have the opportunity to direct that operator away. But I really think it puts drivers at a disadvantage when there might be a tow truck right there and then the tow truck can't even come down. And now we're telling a private individual that he can't walk on the side of the roadway as well. So, like I say, I don't have a problem with the intent of the bylaw, but I do think we should afford these, they're business people too. I think we should afford them the opportunity to at least see if their services are required. Leave your tow truck 150 meters away. If you feel like walking down there and presenting your card, I think that's a reasonable thing for us to permit these folks to do.
Councillor Hanna?
Oh, thank you, Mayor. Just for clarification, the bylaw, the way it reads, it says provides the fire service the authority to enforce the bylaw. So for clarification, are we going to consider swearing a number of fire service personnel in as bylaw enforcement officers? Or will they be just issuing summonses at the time or taking all the information and providing it for a bylaw person to do it? I'm just looking for clarification on the mechanics of this, how it would work so it's not confusing.
Clerk Ainsworth?
Thank you, through you. Certain members of the fire services are able to lay fines and lay charges. And if needed, then they could work in conjunction with the bylaw enforcement department for those fines and charges.
Follow up?
Follow up?
Do our bylaw personnel have the authority to demand identification or driver's licenses from motorists?
I think we're not quite sure of that. We're not sure of that. Councillor Hanna will have to follow up on that.
Thank you. I'm just looking to make sure that when we go forward with this, we don't leave a bunch of loopholes and cause more confusion that what we're trying to do
Okay.
actually does achieve the purpose.
So given that, Clerk Ainsworth, what's the best way to handle this, please? One moment. Deputy Mayor Coughlin?
Thank you, Marilyn. I'm happy to support Councillor Cabral in a referral to staff, to not only have a revision possibly of Section 3.1, but also to have Chief Kirk available for comment at the next opportunity when we're discussing this.
Clerk Ainsworth?
Yes, thank you. I believe Chief Kirk is on the call.
Mr. Mayor, if I could comment.
Oh, thank you.
Through you to Councillor Hanna, the way on your first question about whether fire department members could issue tickets under the bylaw, there's a process in place with the Ontario Fire Marshal that I would have to sign a letter with my intent to appoint assistant to the fire marshals. So basically, being an assistant to the fire marshal allows all duties of the fire chief, which I'm bylawed, and I'm a POA officer under the bylaw. That would give them the right to enforce the bylaw with fines.
Okay, so with respect to reviewing the wording, Clerk Ainsworth, what, refer it then, or?
Thank you. Through you, as the bylaw is not on the agenda tonight for approval, it is scheduled for the next meeting. I would recommend that an amendment be proposed stating, and I'm just figuring out the end of the wording, but that Section 3.1 and 3.4 of the draft bylaw be amended to allow solicitation by a tow operator in certain circumstances, and that would afford me the opportunity to work with Councillor Cabral to get the wording that he might be seeking for the bylaw prior to its presentation for July 8th.
Okay. Councillor Cabral, you'll move that? You're muted again.
Sorry, I tried to unmute Councillor Moore. Anyway, yes, Mayor Allen, thank you. That would be.
And Deputy Mayor Colgan, you'll second that? Okay, do I need to have that read again, or are we ready to vote on that? Okay, we'll vote. All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you.
Mayor Allen, may I make a comment?
Please.
I'm just curious with respect to the charges. Maybe later on we can actually find out from bylaw, but lots of times bylaw would lay charges and just call upon witnesses to actually prosecute the case. So I think that might be a situation that would be similar to what Chief Kirk was alluding to.
Okay, that can come out in discussion with following up on this. That's good. Moving on to 8.5, outdoor patios. Can I have a mover and seconder to get this on the floor?
Mayor Allen? I'm sorry,
The main motion?
Yes, the
Sorry.
main motion.
So we have the mover and seconder for the main motion, same. That the report from the clerk regarding draft bylaw regulate tow trucks attending collision scenes dated June 17, 2020 be received. And go ahead.
That the draft tow bylaw be presented for consideration at the next regular meeting of council, and that Section 3.1 and 3.4 of the draft bylaw be amended to allow solicitation by a tow operator in certain circumstances.
All those in favor? That is carried. 8.5, mover and seconder to get this on the table. Councillor Ma and Councillor Cabral. Discussion. Who did you have? Councillor Ritchie, did you have a comment on this? Councillor Cabral?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. First off, I wanted to commend our building department there. I did receive calls from a couple of establishments, and they were very anxious about being able to open on the Friday, and in particular because not all of our establishments also provide food. So we had one establishment that had been literally closed the entire time. So I did want to reach out and say thank you to our staff there for expediting those two patios. I don't know if there were any other patios in Springwater that were also able to open up on Friday, but I can tell you that both of those patios were quite active on the Friday, the Saturday, and the Sunday, and they are very much so distancing one another, and the tables are well spread apart too. This particular item really, although it addresses the outdoor patios per the alcohol gaming control relaxed regulations, let's say, this one here speaks to encroachment for the most part, and I was just actually curious to know how many liquor licensed establishments within Springwater Township. I couldn't really think of any that would require encroaching onto township property. So I just wanted to know if there was a particular establishment out there already, maybe one or two that found themselves in a position where they actually had to encroach onto township property, because that wasn't, I don't think it was the case here in Elmvale. So that was really a question, Mayor Allen.
Clerk Ainsworth, can you address that?
Thank you. So this report does deal with patios or restaurants who sell liquor, but it also deals with food establishments that might not sell liquor. So there are places in Elmvale that might require an encroachment agreement, and staff would want it to be preemptive and not have the businesses opening delayed any more than they might be due to COVID. So this would provide a temporary relief anyways for the businesses should they need to have an encroachment on township property.
All right, thanks very much for that clarification. That I hadn't looked at it from that perspective, but I appreciate that.
Other comments, questions? Councillor Ma Chapman.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. I also want to thanks to the building department. I have reached out to them because I just have an establishment in my ward who wanted to do an outdoor patio, and they are working together to make this happen. And it's great if you do order a takeout and then you have no place to wait. So at least you can wait in the patio section for your food or whatever and enjoy the sun. So I want to thank them, and I think this is a great way to support our local establishments. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I'll read the motion that the report regarding outdoor patios, temporary encroachment agreements dated June 17, 2020 be received, and that council hereby authorize the mayor and clerk to enter into temporary encroachment agreements with restaurants and bars for the purposes of outdoor patios to ensure the businesses compliance with provincial emergency orders and to promote proper physical distancing during COVID-19 pandemic, and that businesses requesting a temporary encroachment agreement be required to submit an application and adhere to the necessary Building Code Act, Zoning Bylaw, and Fire Protection and Prevention Act, and address all public works concerns along with the necessary inspections to ensure compliance, and that the temporary encroachment agreement shall expire no later than November 1, 2020. All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Moving on to 9.1 information reports. We have bylaw permit activity summary report, the bylaw enforcement summary report, January to May 220, the mix report, ZB 220004, and a ministerial delegations AMO conference reports. Can I have a mover and seconder to get those on the floor, please? Councillor Cabral, Councillor Moore. Anybody like to discuss any of these? Okay, the report items listed herein be received as information, the ones I just listed. All those in favor? That is carried. Verbal reports, county updates. Deputy Mayor Coughlin?
Thank you, Malin. If we could defer, my notes are not loading at this moment, so if I can go after 10.3.
We will go after municipal updates. Anybody have municipal updates? Councillor Hanna?
Well, thank you, Mayor. I'm not sure who gets all the emails, so I apologize. I'm telling you something everybody knows, but our fire chief has been doing an excellent job dealing with some of the residents in the Midhurst area who are looking for some type of rate or something with our fire service if they're able to do it for Canada Day. And I've got a lot of positive feedback from the residents who have been dealing with Chief Kirk, saying how helpful and how grateful they are for his interaction. So I don't know whether our fire service is able to do anything for Canada Day, but I just want to make sure everybody was aware that there was some positive efforts being made.
Thank you. Councillor Moore?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. Just to reinforce update from the library that they've started their curbside pickup, which is going very well. They're very busy. You can call in to reserve or reserve online, make an appointment. They're not ready to open the doors just yet, but books as well as hotspots are available for reservation. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Ma Chapman?
Thank you, Mary Ellen. I just want to thank Chief Kirk for having a tour of the new truck. I went over last Friday, and he gave me a tour of the new fire truck, and it's absolutely beautiful. So if anyone gets the opportunity to go and view it, they should. So I just want to thank him for that.
Thank you. Councillor Cabral? You look like you're new at this, Councillor Cabral.
I left it on before, but I was caught humming, so I apologize for that. I just wanted to remind viewers in particular, because I suspect everyone in council chambers and of course online is aware that the farmers market is opening this Friday in Elmvale. And with the weather the way it is, it's probably going to be a really, really nice day come Friday. So if you have an inkling for some fresh produce, they also have crafts, and of course usually someone there selling local maple syrup and local honey as well. So something to keep in mind. That's the Elmvale Farmers Market. Thank you.
Thank you. I would also like to remind people that the Elmvale Zoo is open. CAO Schmidt and I went for a tour of it before opening last week to check out the physical distancing and the control of numbers of people. They've been working with the health unit, and they opened up last Saturday. They were sold out in bookings for the first 4 days, but that still represents about 35% of the previous year's volume of people. And yet all or more costs associated with operation. So please spread the word that it's open and get people going back out to the zoo. They have some new animals, and it's a great place, as we all know. I'd also like to put out a plea to those who might be listening. We are getting a lot of complaints about ATVs and motorbikes traveling at excessive speeds and traveling on places that they're not supposed to be traveling, specifically trails. And people are out walking as much or more because of being restricted in the activities they can do. And we're getting a lot of comments and complaints about illegal speeds and use of trails, and just lack of respect and concern with other people. And it's very important. I mean, we opened up the roads for ATVs, so there's lots of possibility to travel on roads. So please stay off the trails that you're not supposed to be on. Stop breaking, snapping the locks and knocking over the barriers. They're closed for a reason. And so share the beauty of our township and county fairly with other people that want to enjoy it. Deputy Mayor Coughlin, county update?
Yes, thank you, Marilyn. County Council did vote in support of the Simcoe Manor redevelopment, which was some pretty substantive news, which exciting news. And aside from that, there's nothing else that I can recall.
We are resuming at county the governance meetings in the next week or two and the service delivery meetings. So there will be some news coming, updates coming from that. Item 10.3, COVID-19 updates. CAO Schmidt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and my apologies to members of council and any viewers for my long-winded discussion here. And my apologies as well that some of it may be dated, but again, I just want to make sure everybody's aware of changes that have recently happened. So as most of you are aware, the province announced on June 8th that 24 regions in the province of Ontario were permitted to move to stage 2 of the province's reopening framework. So they are adapting a regional approach, as most of you are aware. Simcoe Muskoka, which includes the township of Springwater, falls within this group. And as of June 12th, last Friday, a number of restrictions were lifted in these areas, which included establishments providing personal care and services were able to reopen. So individuals are able to obtain haircuts. Individuals can go to the hair salon, get their nails done, so on and so forth. Businesses primarily engaged in providing other personal services, so house sitting, personal physical trainers, personal shopping services, party and wedding planning, and consulting services were also able to reopen. Restaurants, bars, food trucks, and other food and drink establishments were able to reopen for dining in outdoor areas only. such as patios, as was discussed earlier tonight, curbside, parking lots, and adjacent premises. Shopping malls and centers, in addition to providing online curbside pickup and delivery services, are able to reopen. All photography studios and services, including portrait, aerial, special event, commercial, and industrial photography, are able to reopen. All film and television production activities are able to resume. Indoor and outdoor touring guide services are able to resume. All indoor and outdoor swimming pools and outdoor splash pads and wading pools may reopen to the public. Again, with regards to the township, our Elmville Splash Pad I'll speak to in a minute. Outdoor only recreational facilities such as paintball, mini golf, archery, ranges, go-kart tracks are able to reopen. However, playgrounds, play structures, and outdoor fitness equipment still remain closed. Ontario parks, campgrounds, and private campgrounds can reopen for recreational vehicle, car camping, and other types of camping. Outdoor team sports may resume if physically distanced, only for training, so hence no scrimmages or games can happen at this stage. All existing and new drive-in and drive-through venues can reopen for a variety of purposes, such as theaters, concerts, animal attractions, and cultural appreciation. All libraries are permitted to reopen with limited on-site services. Community centers can reopen to the public with limited or modified on-site programs and services. Museums, galleries, aquariums, zoos, outdoor heritage institutions, and other establishments are able to reopen. Non-essential in-person gatherings of any size do continue to be strongly discouraged. So large outdoor events such as concerts, large festivals, parades, as we talked about with the fire department, and amusement fairs are not permitted at this time. With that said, we are still trying to work with our fire department, obviously, and the chief in trying to do something for Canada Day, along with our recreational and special events coordinator. They are trying to organize some different events for Canada Day, so it's not all for naught. May not be a parade, but we are trying to do something. So further to the above, regardless of where one lives in Ontario, so this isn't based on regional, this is all Ontario. Social gathering limits have been expanded to up to 10 people. People are encouraged to create or join a social circle. Social circles are different from social gatherings. Gatherings of people outside your household are limited to 10 people, and proper physical distancing is still to be practiced in those settings, so that's regarding social gatherings. Whereas with social circles, which are voluntary, should include all household members and can include family and friends outside the whole household, up to a maximum of 10 people. And these individuals can interact and come into close contact with one another without having to physically distance themselves. In addition to that, places of worship are able to reopen across the province, and lastly, child care centers across the province are also permitted to reopen with obviously strict public health measures in place. And further to that, the province did announce this morning that all emergency orders have now been extended to June 30th. So to bring things a little closer to home as it relates to Springwater, Springwater does have, as of earlier today, 12 confirmed cases of COVID-19, of which 8 have now recovered, and 1 unfortunately has passed. With stage 2 upon us, the township won't be fully moving to stage 2 for at least another week or more. Our reopening framework, which has been previously shared with council, allows administration staff to voluntarily come back to the office. With this said, we are now working on a modified schedule, and those modified schedules will be effective as of Monday, June 22nd. And some staff will continue to primarily work remotely, while others will be gradually moving back to the administration center. With this said, stage 3 of the township's reopening framework is, which is subject to provincial directions. Hence, whenever the province moves to stage 3, township will be moving to stage 3 shortly thereafter. When we get to stage 3, our administration staff will be required to be back full-time in this building. All of our outside public works, parks and facilities, bylaw enforcement, and building inspectors are back to full-time duties as of June 1st. As I mentioned earlier, with regards to the splash pad, staff is working on trying to reopen the splash pad. However, we are currently finalizing construction in Homer Barrett Park, which is hopefully going to be finished up this week or next. And as such, we are trying to reopen the splash pad for July 2nd. The township has been receiving requests from local sports teams who are interested in renting our sports fields. So staff's working on modifying our rental agreements and installing signage where appropriate prior to allowing these rentals. Unfortunately, the fields at Tree Nursery Sports Park won't be available until after July 2nd, as maintenance won't be completed until such time. In addition to that, staff is currently meeting to review our plans as it relates to the reopening of our community halls. This is something that we weren't expecting as part of Stage 2, so we are a little bit surprised, I guess, by the announcement, but we are working to try to get these community halls up and going and available for rental. At this time, I'm not aware of any requests or any pressure that we're getting from the community to reopen our community halls, but we are looking to open those in short time. Again, staff has, as mentioned, Councillor Cabral mentioned earlier, and Councillor Ma Chapman regarding outdoor patios. So we have received a couple of requests, formal requests from local restaurants seeking permission to reopen. And happy to report that the two facilities in Elmville, Steelers and the Palace, were able to reopen as of Friday. And we are still working on a couple of other establishments that are looking to reopen, and we'll do our best to assist them where we can. In addition to that, we are back to our regular council meeting schedule, so the first and third Wednesdays of each month, of course, with the exception of July and August. And staff will be moving forward on July 27th with our first public meetings. So there was some communication, I believe, earlier this week or at the end of last week regarding our public meetings. And again, assuming all goes well, we will look to August 24th to conduct further public meetings. I guess I'll sum up with the reopening of the province and our municipality. I would ask that everyone please continue to do your part in being socially responsible and ensure that you practice proper physical distancing and wash your hands as often as possible. And at this time, I'll be glad to take any questions from members of council. Thank you.
Thank you, C.O. Schmidt, for a detailed report and for your detailed meetings that you have, and senior staff with all the tuning in to the health services and the government and your other CAOs. You continue to be busier than ever with your senior management team, so we all appreciate that. Questions and comments? Councillor Cabral.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. I just have a question with respect to federal government. They're now saying that they will be permitting camping and opening up some of their camping sites. I'm just wondering if CAO Schmidt, with respect to our own campgrounds, they are not yet open to just the regular weekend campers. I just want kind of like a sense of, it's the snowbirds that had nowhere else to go that were permitted to go there. But could you give us a sense of how many of our campgrounds are accommodating A, snowbirds, and B, could you bring us up to speed on the camping situation, whether or not you've heard anything that they may be opening similar to what the federal government has said, but I don't think they've done it yet.
Actually, I'm getting a motion from Clerk Chaperon.
Thank you. Through you to Councillor Cabral. The province has advised that private campgrounds can open up. That was part of the Stage 2 as of last Friday. Provincial parks are opening up on a staged effect. But the campgrounds within the township, staff have been working with them to get their campground licensing completed and finalized so that they can open up appropriately. We started this process with them prior to, so that they would be ready when the time came.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Moving on to 11.1, which is a notice of motion. Councillor Moore had brought forward a motion that the council hereby desires to rescind bylaw 220-027, being a bylaw to delegate powers to the chief administrative officer and to appoint a deputy chief administrative officer during the COVID-19 pandemic, and that the bylaw to rescind bylaw 220-027 be presented for consideration at the next council meeting, regular meeting of council. Is there a seconder to this motion? Councillor Hannah, Councillor Moore, any further comments?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Allen. I'd just like to present my position on this notice of motion. My motion to rescind the delegation of authority is certainly not meant to be personal toward the CAO or staff. In fact, I feel they've all done a fabulous job since the beginning of the pandemic. Like most businesses, the township was required to pivot their business practice quickly and adapt to a new way of conducting the daily functions, and I feel like they've done that very well and successfully. Initially, council adopted to accept the delegation of authority under the premise that the CAO may be required to make urgent decisions that would need to be made so last minute that consulting council prior to would not be possible. So to date, I really haven't seen where that was actually needed. Even if the predicted second wave of COVID should occur, the township has positioned itself in such a way that procedures and processes are now all in place to allow for a flexible response. I feel that now it is time for council to resume what it was initially elected to do, and that is to be the governing body for the township, elected to make the tough decisions when required to do so. We have the means and technology to consult and react quickly, pardon me, which we have been doing, also successfully. So I see no valid reason why we should continue with this. And I would ask for a recorded vote too, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions, other comments?
Oh, sorry.
Councillor Cabral?
Yeah, my hand was off screen. Sorry about that, Mayor Allen. I guess my thoughts are similar in nature. I think staff has done a wonderful job. This was a stopgap measure. With the uncertainties of the pandemic, what was coming down the pipe, everything was shutting down. We didn't know where we were going to be tomorrow. And there was certainly a sense of urgency as far as having a mechanism in place through CAO Schmidt and the delegation of authority in order to accomplish some of those. But I think this has become fairly starting to become more normalized. And I have to agree that role of council as the governing body is to do exactly that. I think we're at a stage now where I don't know if it's relevant anymore to put the burden of running the township entirely on our CAO's shoulders. Although I got to admit his shoulders are very, very broad, and he's done a bang-up job getting us here. But I'd have to agree with Councillor Moore that I think council should reintegrate itself into the governing of the Springwater Township and once again, I guess, do the job that we were elected to do.
Thank you. Any other comments? Councillor Hannah?
Thank you. I just want to reiterate to the folks who were questioning why this happened in the beginning. I think it was appropriate. It was the appropriate thing to do in the beginning, but I agree it's now time to move on.
Thank you. Clerk, Councillor Mott Chapman?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. I somewhat do agree to this, but since we're still in emergency state, for my phone's ringing. Emergency state, we're out till end of June. That I don't agree with this at this moment. I do agree with it when we're in a better position, but I think we should keep as is. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Coughlin?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. I do have a few questions. The second part of the motion to appoint a deputy chief administrative officer, if I can get clarification as to what that portion of this means. But also, I just want to clarify, as far as I understand, by our council approving a bylaw to delegate powers, the delegative authority is delegated. Therefore, the actual authority still remains with council, being in that should a decision by a delegated authority be made, council still has the opportunity. We are still the authority. So it's not like by having a delegative authority in place, sorry, I'm going to switch mics. By having a delegative authority in place, it's not shirking responsibility. It's not passing the buck. It's simply putting a measure in place that should a decision need to be made. And yes, we can electronically have meetings, although there would require notice to the public to do so. The bylaw also states that that authority is only pertaining to COVID-related issues, and that it would be done in conjunction with the mayor and the ECG group, which is our senior management team. So I'm just curious as to what hasn't, I mean, we are operating in the new normal, but I don't understand what we would like to do different, because as far as I'm concerned, the way that our staff has moved us through this, the way that council has been able to collaborate with staff to ensure that we've become leaders. Other municipalities are looking to our staff for best practices. So I'm just not sure. I'm all for change when change needs to be put into place, but when the province declares that there's no longer emergency, this bylaw will be defunct. So I'm just curious as to why we are doing this. And secondly, also what a deputy chief administrative officer would be during that.
Okay, I'll direct that to CAO Schmidt for comment, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I believe the intent of appointing the deputy CAO during COVID was, should something have happened to myself during that time and somebody else needed to step in to potentially take over for the CAO position, that's why we had designated a deputy CAO through that bylaw.
But CAO Schmidt, the result of this will be a continuation of what's happening currently, is my understanding, correct?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So essentially, yeah, I think some of the comments received tonight is that, the intent was back in March or whenever this bylaw came into place, to be honest with you. I don't recall. All the dates seem to be blending right now. But at any rate, the intent was that we weren't sure what kind of decisions were going to have to be made and how quickly some of these decisions would potentially have to be made. And, the emergency still is ongoing. And so we don't know today and or tomorrow and or the next day as to what decisions may still need to be made. So I think the intent was to try to safeguard the municipality, if you will, to try to make sure that we had a measure in place. Should a decision have to be quickly made, we could do so. With your comment, I think, I don't see really much changing, to be honest with you. Most of the decisions that have been made to date are administrative or operational type of decisions, which quite honestly, don't really need council's approval unless there is a budgetary impact where we don't have budget and or approval to spend funds. Then I would be required to come back to council and seek that permission. But for the most part, the decisions that have been made, a lot of them have been administrative in nature, which is the role of the CAO, in my opinion.
Councillor Moore.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. Just 2 points. The emergency declaration that the province has extended to the end of June, recognizing our province is very large. There's parts of our province that are still struggling. Springwater's not one of those. Springwater's not struggling with COVID. We have larger populations south of us that are really having a difficult time. Secondly, I'd just like to point out or go back to when we initially declared, approved the declaration. I had asked CAO Schmidt at that time what you considered an urgent decision, or what did you think would possibly be a decision at that time that you would have to make without consulting council. And so I'd just like to ask, what decisions have you made without consulting council to this point?
CAO Schmidt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you to Councillor Moore. Again, similar to the comment that I just made, for the most part, most of the decisions that have been made to date have been in consultation with the mayor and our CCG group, and we've gone ahead and made those decisions. For the most part, they're administrative and or operational in nature, which haven't required us to come back to seek council's approval.
So follow-up.
Follow-up.
So truly then, it was a good stopgap to put in place should you had to make a decision, an urgent decision, which from what I understand was not the case. You didn't have to do that. And so secondly, I'm really just asking that we go back to where we were pre-COVID and that council has the responsibilities like we did pre-COVID, and that you continue doing your great job like you have been doing all along.
Thank you. I think we understand that. That's good. Thank you. Anybody else? Councillor Cabral.
Sorry, Mayor Allen, I was bumped off there for a little bit, so I have to admit that I did miss a portion of the debate, but I'm reconnected now. I did, after the meeting where we did provide the declaration of authority to our CAO, and at that time we did have some questions about it too. But I must admit, I did receive comments from residents that they actually did feel that we were kind of not doing our job, and we just pretty much given it to the CAO to let him carry the ball for us. And I guess based on what I have heard, I think council's capable of carrying the ball on its own again. And I guess that's my position. I'm certainly not diminishing anyone's role or anyone's job. I think they've done a fantastic job. But in retrospect, the last few weeks, we've grown accustomed to our remote meetings. We're able to carry on business quite normally. And I'm pretty sure that we would be able to call a fairly quick meeting if the need arose and be able to still do it remotely. So that's just my comments with respect to the process.
Thank you. I had actually heard the opposite, that there was by no way an abdication by council, but commendation of how council and senior staff and the CAO in particular have responded and acted proactively during this COVID situation. So, okay, I think we've had good discussion. Recorded vote is requested.
A recorded vote was requested by Councillor Moore. When I state your name, please state yes or no.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. Just for clarification, the appointment of a deputy chief, is that come forward to us? From what I understand, the bylaw will be coming forward at our next meeting, should council direct that. If we vote this down, does that mean then, as it's one resolution, that there will not be the appointment of a deputy chief coming forward? Should we separate the two?
CAO Schmidt.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that is correct. If the bylaw is rescinded, then essentially the appointment of a deputy CAO, there wouldn't be one.
So I think the contemplation, correct me if I'm wrong, was the contemplation of the appointment of a deputy chief administrative officer was at this point an interim measure. CAO Schmidt, maybe.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, that's correct.
Okay. All right then. Proceed with the recorded vote, please.
Thank you. When I state your name, please state yes or no. Councillor Cabral.
I'm sorry, Clerk Ainsworth. I did miss a portion. I don't know exactly how the motion is written. So would you be able to read the motion, please?
Yes, go ahead, please.
Certainly. That council hereby desires to rescind bylaw 2020-027, being a bylaw to delegate powers to the Chief Administrative Officer and to appoint a Deputy Chief Administrative Officer during the COVID-19 pandemic, and that the bylaw to rescind bylaw 220-027 be presented for consideration at the next regular meeting of council.
I'm sorry, Chief Ainsworth, that's simply not going to work. And the reason it won't work is because our next meeting is not until August. That's even past the date that the provincial government has extended the emergency mandate to. So I was under the impression this was something that would be done and today. So I would suggest, I don't know how you do it, that this particular motion would have to take effect today.
Clerk Ainsworth.
Thank you. The next meeting of council is July 8th. And in speaking with Councillor Moore regarding this notice of motion, I had explained that council staff don't preemptively assume that a motion would be approved by council. So the notice of motion would need to be disposed of by council and then the bylaw come forward. So unfortunately, the bylaw is not on this meeting. It cannot be rescinded by motion. It has to be rescinded by bylaw, which notice of would have to be placed on the agenda.
Councillor Moore?
Just a quick question. The way that the motion is written, I just want to be clear that by rescinding the bylaw, being a bylaw to delegate powers and appoint a deputy chief administrative officer, is that in a strange way appointing a deputy CAO? Or are we, I want to rescind the bylaw delegating authority to the CAO and the deputy if that should happen, that the CAO wasn't available. Is that how that reads?
Okay, Clerk Ainsworth, please clarify.
Thank you. So the exact title of the original bylaw that was passed March 25th is being a bylaw to delegate powers to the Chief Administrative Officer and to appoint a Deputy Chief Administrative Officer during the COVID-19 pandemic. So by rescinding that entire bylaw, it would rescind the delegated powers as well as the appointment of the Deputy CAO.
Okay, thank you.
Proceed.
Thank you.
Clerk Ainsworth?
Thank you. I will start the vote again. When I state your name, please state yes or no. Councillor Cabral?
Yes.
Councillor Hannah?
Yes.
Councillor Chapman?
No.
Councillor Moore?
Yes.
Councillor Ritchie?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Coughlin?
No?
Mayor Allen?
No.
That motion is carried.
Okay, so,
Mayor Allen?
Yes.
I believe Councillor Cabral had his hand up.
I'm sorry, Mayor Allen, that's fine. It just seems that this particular vote was almost a moot in nature, considering how long it'll take to come to fruition. It might be over. The COVID thing might be over, and this, I don't know how it's going to go forward then after we don't have a CAO with delegated authority if they cancel it on the 30th, that's all.
we'll work it out.
Yes.
Okay, 11.2, I'm turning the chair over to Deputy Mayor Coughlin.
Thank you, Marilyn. So for 11.2, I would need a mover and a seconder for a motion. Actually, I need a seconder first. Councillor Chapman. And it reads, whereas council has made a $2,000 donation to the Elmvale District High School EDHS to help fund their student exchange program with students from Pond Inlet, Nunavut. And whereas due to COVID-19, the student exchange program for 2020 was canceled, be it there resolved that council hereby authorizes EDHS to retain the donation for a future student exchange program. Is there any questions or comment on this? And seeing no questions or comment? Sorry, Councillor Hannah.
Oh, thank you. I'm sorry, I probably was quick with my hand. I see the trips that the exchange students take as being educational. And part of this educational process, in my view, is the students which have done a great job preparing a business case and coming before council. And that's a business opportunity that they would normally get in the classroom. This is a real life situation when they come before council, present the business cases, when some cases have been just outstanding, in my view anyway, for students to come and do. I'm sure that there's residents out there who are going to wonder why we didn't ask for the $2,000 back when the event they got the money for may not happen. I guess I would answer that by saying that the students that have come forward in the past, I don't think they've ever been denied the funding. So whether we get it back or not, they would probably get it again in the future. Just a couple observations I have is that I believe it was the grade 12 students that came forward asking for this funding. It was 1,500. It got bumped up to 2,000. The students that worked hard to fundraise and so on, they may not be the same students that go on to this event if it takes place, because they will probably have graduated in some cases and gone on to college or university or whatever. However, having said all that, I would suggest that if this motion is going to pass, I would really like to offer a friendly amendment to it, and I would ask the mayor who's made this motion to consider this, that What I'm suggesting is because, as I've stated, this is a real life opportunity outside the classroom for our students to come forward with a business case and present it to council. And what I would like to suggest is that if the funds are not returned to by the students and they still require the funding, that they be asked to come forward and present a business case explaining how the expenditures will take place. I hope you understand what I'm trying to say. If they keep the money, they keep the money, but they still should be asked to come forward to council and present a business case. Gives them the opportunity to do that, and also it gives us an opportunity to meet the new students if that's who's taken place, replace any of the ones that maybe have moved on.
Thank you, Councillor Hanna. So, Mayor Allen, would you be then okay with, at the end of it, just saying pending a delegation from the 2021 exchange group?
Yes, I agree with the concept and the adjustment.
All right, and so for clarification on the third paragraph where it says, be it therefore resolved that council hereby authorizes EDHS to retain the donation from a future student exchange program pending a delegation from the 2021 exchange students. And all those in favor? And any opposed? My apologies, Councillor Hanna, you are kind of a shadow on the screen. I can't see your hand if it's in front of you.
No, I'm sorry, your audio is breaking up on my computer, so I wasn't sure what you said, to be honest with you, and it's happened a few times tonight, but that's just our technology. So could you please repeat what you've asked?
It was just a call for the vote? In asking all those in favor? In a show of hands?
What are you asking me to vote on? My friendly amendment or the motion?
Yes, as amended by you. So the last paragraph would read, be it therefore resolved that council hereby authorizes EDHS to retain the donation for a future student exchange program pending a delegation from the 2021 exchange students.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carried, and I will pass the chair back over to Mayor Allen.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Coughlin. Okay, we're at item 12, items for future consideration. Oh, Clerk Ainsworth, please.
Mayor Allen.
Oh, yeah,
just
the main motion.
that is voted on and carried, just asking if there are any other notices of motion.
Yes, thank you. Any other notices of motion tonight? Okay, don't appear to be. Item 12, items for future consideration. Don't see any hands. So I need a mover and a seconder for approval of the bylaws, please. Deputy Mayor Coughlin, Councillor Moore, that the bylaws listed herein be signed and sealed by the Mayor and Clerk, 2020-043, Official Plan Amendment 60, OP 219-001, Rounds Ranch. All those in favor? Mover and seconder for 14, confirmatory bylaw, please. Deputy Mayor Coughlin, Councillor Ma Chapman. That bylaw 2020-044 to confirm and adopt the proceedings of council at the regular meeting held on June 17, 2020, listed herein, be signed and sealed by the Mayor and Clerk. All those in favor? That's carried. And adjournment, please. Mover, Councillor Moore, Councillor Cabral. That the regular meeting of the Township of Springwater does now adjourn at 8:02 p.m. to meet again in regular meeting on July 8, 2020 at 6:30 p.m. Council Chambers, Admin Center, Minising. All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you very much. Stay safe, and thank you for tuning in.
Thank you.